And you're live.
And good afternoon. Hope you're enjoying your Monday, along with Nick Archuleta, North Dakota United President. I'm Tom Gerhardt, Director of Public Affairs, and I'm thinking green today, Nick, and maybe we should be outside. It's so pleasant.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like where you're watching this from, but it is gorgeous here in Bismarck. In fact, this is exactly the same color as Tom's lawn. So
I'm finally able to see my lawn for the first time in about 3 months, and it's not pretty. And in the backyard, actually, it's still covered in snow, and that's a whole story nobody's cares about, but my backyard, and I'm not even kidding, has the most snow of anyone on the whole block.
it's true.
By far. So anyway, it's nice to see that snow melting and spring emerging a little bit. And we're also seeing a lot of things really picking up some steam here at the Capitol, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today, about 15 days remaining if they want to make that 70-day deadline. And we'll see if that happens or not, but certainly a lot of decisions and a lot of things that are on the hot plate right now.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. This is that time of the session, I think, where people are really very concerned about what's actually going to become law. We saw, for example, that at the beginning of the session on the first day, I was thinking about this just the other day, where people are patting each other on the back. Hey, good to see you. You wintered well, all that other stuff. And now, a lot of those, there's more tension in each of those rooms, but all the hearings are pretty much finished. Appropriations still, as you might imagine, still has some work to do, and the last of the bills are being kicked out. They do want to make that 70-day thing. We're 15 days away from that. It sounds to me, though, just talking to some folks, that they're probably going to miss that day by a few days. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, anyway, we're getting fairly close, and a lot will happen in the next few weeks, to say the least. Well, this morning we went to the Capitol bright and early to listen to Senate Judiciary Committee work on House Bill 1310, which is the Guns in Schools bill, which we've kept a very close eye on throughout the entire session. And I guess we came out of there, we didn't like what we heard this morning.
No, we didn't. There was one of the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee whom we thought was maybe going to vote our way because he voted on the permitless carry bill. He voted against that. We thought maybe we'd get him on the guns in school bill, but he changed his mind and he's going to support it. But that doesn't mean that the fight is over. This is a matter of principle right now. That's the only way I can clarify this. The guns in school bill is something that we have opposed ever since they first started talking about it at the legislature. Now, this bill is a much better bill than any of the previous ones we've ever seen, but it is a matter, we do not want anybody but trained law enforcement officers with guns in our school around our kids. Particularly in this bill, there's something troubling in that parents don't get to know who that individual is that's carrying a gun around their students. The other thing is we have heard from our members, you folks out there, who have let us know over and over and over again that trained law enforcement are the only people that we need with guns in our schools. So I'm going to encourage everybody here and challenge everybody that's watching this, and you tell your friends too, contact your senators and let them know what you think about this bill. We think that they can achieve the same goals. This bill doesn't really fix anything. If they were serious about making our schools safer, they would invest in things like retrofitting our school entrances, making sure that their mental health was paid for, and that some good came of that in those other areas. So let's make sure that we make those calls. I think Kelly sent out a notice today asking people to please contact their legislators on this bill, and let's hope that everybody does that.
Yeah, and there should be a thread I'm sure Kelly put on our Facebook Live underneath here, which will link you to that, so just go ahead and click that. The urgency is that it passed out of the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side this morning, 5-1, as Nick mentioned, and we expect that this will be on the Senate floor tomorrow.
Yeah.
So a vote it's already passed the House, as we know, so this could be over quickly, and so the time is now to reach out to your senators and let them know that how you feel. And as you said, our members have clearly said, and it's worth saying, I think, no school has asked for this.
That's a good point, Tom. Nobody, no superintendents, no school board members, no principals, came and testified in favor of this bill. They don't want it. And so the thing is, they don't need it. What we really need are the more broad-based approach to keeping our schools safe. This bill doesn't do that, and it should be defeated.
So we were talking to legislators in the Senate today, spent the afternoon having some conversations. We'll follow that up tomorrow. It's safe to say that we are working hard on this bill for our members, no doubt about it.
Well, our members have let us know what it means to them. So at the very least, we are working hard to change some minds on the Senate side. But we need your help. Call them. Your voice matters. This is a good time to raise it. And
Kelly has posted a link which will lead you directly to our site where you can let your senator know how you feel. Well, we walked across the hall after that disappointing start to the day to House Bill 1436, and where Representative Beadle from Fargo had offered an amendment. This is a PERS-related bill. You could explain it. There's a lot to it. It was a delayed bill offered very late by Representative Carlson.
Yeah, Representative Carlson put this bill in rather late on the delayed bill tool that he has, and so it's been considered now in their committee. The thing about this bill basically is that it also had a couple of amendments that he put forward last week that were listened to today as well and discussed today. But those amendments, what they did is they tied to the legislature more closely the work of the PERS board and of the Employee Benefits Committee. So it actually puts more of the responsibility and hands-on of the legislature on this bill. What this bill would actually do is it would take the fully funded hybrid program that PERS has now and change it to a self-funded program where the state of North Dakota and PERS assumes the risk. We had a plan just like this back in the 80s, and the legislature didn't fund it properly, and it went bankrupt. And that's why we ended up with a fully funded plan. But what's unique about this plan is that it is a hybrid. It has a risk corridor that only gets better next year than it is even this year. This year, Sanford took about a $57 million loss on this thing. For the PERS shared the first $6 million of losses, so PERS had to pay up $3 million. Sanford took care of the rest. Next year, we've negotiated with Sanford they assume all the losses. So if they lose another $57 million, they're on the hook for all $57 million. We're not. So, and on the flip side of that, up to this year, we shared the gains with them. That goes away too. So next year, this plan is actually even better, I believe, than the plan that's in existence right now. As PERS also negotiated that Sanford put more money into their reserve fund, so that we know that there will be plenty of money there to pay for all of the things associated with the PERS plan. So we haven't taken a position on this. This obviously is something that is very important to Representative Carlson, and as well as in the House, and as well as some folks on the Senate side. So they're going to have to work this out, and we're going to give them all the help they need and space they need to do so.
Well, it's fair to say, I think, that it's a lot to consider
in
a short time frame.
Yeah, I think anybody that watched what happened in Washington last week came away from that experience with the idea that there is nothing really settled about health care in America. Obviously, this is a very, very big issue. One of the reasons that the legislature wants to save so many days is so they can come back in case something does happen with the Affordable Care Act. They'll have time to adjust what North Dakota does to meet those challenges. So I'm not exactly convinced right now that it's a good time for North Dakota to start assuming risk. But this will all get played out. This bill, is it, do we know where it is exactly? We know that it got passed out of committee today.
Correct. Passed out of committee. We'll take a look at the calendar.
Yeah, and we'll look at the calendar and find out exactly when that's scheduled.
We do know fairly confidently, Senate Bill 2186, another bill we've been just really excited about all session, is the Education Innovation Bill. That was held up in the House Education Committee for what seemed like an eternity.
No, it was.
They kicked it out, maybe 2 eternities, and with amended. That passed on the House, was actually put on the House calendar today. They didn't get to it, but we think that'll finally come to a vote on the House floor tomorrow after passing out of the Senate chamber unanimously earlier this session.
Right, and there were some concerns. It passed out of the Senate side easily, and we hoped that it would have that same sort of clear path. I mean, who's not in favor of innovation when it comes to what our students are able to do in their classrooms? and then what teachers are able to lead them to do. So we felt very, very good about this. When it hit the House floor, there were some folks who were a little bit concerned that it gave too much power to the superintendent of public instruction and that individual's ability to waive certain rules and statutes. In my view, some of them took it probably a little bit far, even suggesting that, well, if it's in the statute that the flag is out in front of the school, she could waive that and there wouldn't be a flag in front of the school. Well, come on. It has to do with innovation in schools, and we do believe, though, that the necessary amendments were made when it got sent back to the committee, the House Education Committee. It got passed out of there. It'll be on the floor, and we think that the amendments on there are good enough that it will pass in the House. And we'll knock on wood just to be sure.
And all the education associations are really excited about this, and of course, Senator Oban carried this, Senator Pullman introduced it, so it's got bipartisan support, and we have school districts lined up ready to implement some of these programs. So all the pieces are in place, we just need the final stamp of approval.
Exactly, and we have some very innovative school districts out there. If you're a teacher and you're watching this, you know what the innovation is going on in our schools right now. We just need to find a way to unleash that and to make that the norm rather than the exception, as it is in some places now. By being able to waive certain rules that hold back innovation. And so Senator Pullman, I think, said it best when she first introduced this bill. She said, if you haven't been in a school in the last 5 years, you haven't been in a school. And that's true. We are doing wonderfully innovative things in our school right now. We just want to accelerate that for the benefit of teachers and for the benefit of kids in the communities in which they live.
Yeah, well said. We'll keep an eye on that and keep you updated there. A little piece of history today, I guess, made as Governor Burgum vetoed his first bill. This is House Bill 1153, which was an employee recruitment and retention, gives the governor the ability to give out bonuses to recruit and retain. Let me see if I can spit that out. And he cast his veto power today, Nick.
He did, and I don't know that was going to be received all that well in the House, to be honest with you. He did it, and when you read his reasoning behind why he vetoed it, he did it to basically protect the powers of the executive branch. He went on to say that it is necessary. He said some wonderfully nice things about the value of public employees, and everything he said about them is exactly true. But basically, he didn't want the House to be interlopers on the executive branch and dictate how the executive branch is going to run itself, any more than the House would appreciate the governor coming down, or the Senate, or the judiciary coming in and saying, no, the House, you're doing this wrong, you should do it this way. They wouldn't appreciate that. This was a little bit of an overreach, and at least in the governor's point of view, and he acted accordingly. He just went ahead and vetoed it.
And this was a hot topic because Governor Dalrymple, a year before he left office, gave out some bonuses, and there was something unsettling about that for some lawmakers.
Sure, they were fairly generous bonuses. Let's not kid ourselves. And they were given out at a time when our economic picture was not well known, and it seemed, in hindsight, that wow, you gave the $30,000 bonus here or there. It really makes a big difference, and especially in light of the fact that public employees in our state are not going to get a raise for the next 2 years. So that it seemed rather inappropriate in the eyes of many. So that's probably why this came up in legislation at all. But as I mentioned, the governor's office saw this as a way that the legislative branch was trying to usurp his power to run his office. So that's why he vetoed it.
Back to the Senate chamber today, where another bill passed unanimously. That's the Parental Directives Bill. That's House Bill 1389. Give parents the ability to opt their kids out of testing. And there's an amendment there, and which I guess shows which tests they can opt out of. And then it also, I guess, added what some lawmakers were concerned about. A school could be liable if they don't meet certain standards, and if too many tests are opted out of, blah, 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 blah. But that did pass 45-0 today out of the Senate.
Yeah, and the thing is about the opt-out, this was a very big issue last session when there was a pretty well-organized group of folks who didn't care for the standards that we were using. And there was another group of folks who wondered if maybe too much information was being learned about their student and that they didn't have any control over, and so they would rather opt their kid out rather than give up that information on the child. Frankly, I think both of those concerns were overstated. In the new Every Student Succeeds Act, there's a section in there that specifically deals with opting out. It is perfectly legal, and you know what, in North Dakota it has been legal for many years to opt your child out of tests, the state test in particular. So this just guarantees that again, and in North Dakota, I think we are someplace well under 1% of the people who are eligible to opt out of tests that actually do opt out of tests. So that's an important consideration too. But you're right, and some legislators were right to pick up on this, that in order to have a valid test, you have to have a certain number of students take the thing. And if you don't, it skews your results, even though the federal law says that you can opt out of the standardized tests that are part of ESSA, the evaluations in ESSA. It does still require, I believe, that 95% of the students take the test. So it puts the school districts in kind of a tough spot. Yes, you can opt out, but gee, we need 95, otherwise we're not meeting that goal. And so anyway, it's there. North Dakotans have nothing to fear from these tests, and I think that that's why most parents don't opt their kids out.
Another bill we've been keeping an eye on, and boy, did folks line up to testify against this because it affects school districts, and this included local schools, is House Bill 1361. Now, the Senate Finance and Tax Committee, Senator Cook heads that, will be working on that in committee tomorrow morning, and that was the 3% cap on taxation for the political subdivisions. That made a lot of folks nervous.
Right, and this is another bill that Representative Carlson and Casper put forward and spoke to. I was at that committee meeting, you were too, and their concern was that the state of North Dakota has done so much to help lower property taxes, and they see that, okay, we've done that part by picking up a greater share of school funding, yet people were noticing their tax bills in some areas weren't going down.
Right.
Because the Park Service and the other political subdivisions that have taxing authority were exercising that. And so this was their way of putting the brakes on that. And frankly, there wasn't one organization that represents any political subdivision that wasn't at that hearing saying, whoa, you can't do that. It's going to make things very, very difficult, including school districts and including things like your park boards and other regulatory and political subdivisions. So they gave it a fair hearing, I believe. It was a very long hearing because every one of these people got up and they had what they wanted to say, and they said it. So we'll see what they do in the workup tomorrow, and we'll let you know.
And I think a lot of the testimony, when you put a cap on, was there's a lot of unexpected expenses that can come about for a political subdivision,
Right.
School, whatever that expense may be, and they have to make up that money someplace, which would come right back on the taxpayer if there's a cap.
Well, exactly, and that's not, it's almost like squeezing a balloon. You squeeze in one part, it blows up in another. So I'm sure this committee is fully cognizant of that fact, and they're going to take a look at this and decide whether to give it a do pass or a do not pass recommendation. That's the ball's in Senator Cook's court now, and we'll see what he does with it.
Rebecca writes in to say, tell us that she appreciates us condensing and sharing the information. So, sometimes those hearings can get a little bit long, but we're more than happy to do that. That's our job. We love doing it, and thanks for the appreciation, Rebecca, on that note. Kelly's also posted a link to House Bill 1361, where you can find out a little bit more about that, as well as House Bill 1389, and a link to read Governor Burgum's statement on why he used his veto power on House Bill 1153. Well, I think we should end with
I think we should let everybody know how good Kelly is at it.
Okay, he is good.
Just like a mind reader.
After stumbling out of the blocks with a thumb in the shot for the first few weeks, he's really on top of the game, and we owe a lot to him.
I'm glad he's on our side, I'll tell you.
And what about this,
Yeah, and look what else he did. He made this out of dryer lint. So, thank you, Kelly.
He'll take up knitting, and we'll have hats for next session. But let's just go back to House Bill 1310, the Guns and Schools bill, because really the clock is ticking less than 24 hours until that goes to a vote on the Senate floor. And it is critical now. Time is of the essence to reach out.
It is, and so please take the time to talk to your neighbors, call your parents, let them know that this is a pretty important bill. And it's worth your time to call your senators and let them know that this is not something schools want. If it was, perhaps a school district would have been down here testifying in favor of it. It isn't, and they weren't. And so please defeat this. Help us to do that.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Sure.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. Until next Monday, have a great rest of your week, and we'll give you that update Friday as we look back on another week
Yep.
in the 65th Legislative Assembly.
Bye-bye.